Hello everyone, in this video we will talk about the history of the LGBT movement in Germany. In the meantime, I ask you to subscribe, put your finger up, and if it's not difficult to write a comment. The LGBT movement in Germany has experienced three waves in its development. Since the end of the 19th century, before the Nazis came to power, the first studies of the nature of homosexuality in world history, magazines for gays and lesbians, and films about them have appeared. The second wave, 1960-1980s, led to the formation of LGBT human rights organizations, the formation of German gay culture, the first demonstrations and gay pride. The modern stage of the German LGBT movement was marked by the development of a wide network of narrow-profile LGBT organizations, the legislative regulation of the status of same-sex families, and the prohibition of discrimination against homosexuals. In 2017, same-sex marriages with the right of joint adoption of children were legalized in the country. The birth of the homosexual movement in Germany. The Great French Revolution, 1789 to 1799, and the proclamation of the Declaration of Human and Civil Rights, 1789, initiated the process of separation of church and state and laid the foundations for liberalizing attitudes towards homosexuals in Western Europe. In 1787, the Criminal Code of the Holy Roman Emperor Joseph II, acting on the hereditary lands of the Habsburgs, abolished the death penalty for same-sex relationships and replaced it with fines. In 1791, homosexual relations were officially decriminalized in France, which was also preserved in the French Criminal Code of 1810. Thanks to the Napoleonic Wars, French law spread to many controlled territories, including some German states. On September 30, 1817, a homosexual man was publicly executed in Switzerland for the murder of his lover. This story deeply affected the German-speaking writer Heinrich Hessli, German Heinrich Hössli, as a result of which he conducted his own investigation of this story and based on it wrote the book Eros, the male love of the Greeks, German Eros. Die Männerliebe der Griechen, which is considered the first work on the protection of homosexuality in modern history. In 1870, the Prussian criminal law punishing same-sex relations was adopted by the North German Union, 1, and in 1871 it spread to the territory of the entire German Empire as a result of the unification of the German states into a single state, 2. On January 1, 1872, the new code comes into force, in which the paragraph on unnatural fornication finally receives the number 175, with which it becomes infamous. Publications by Ulrich and Kurt Beeney. The German lawyer and writer Karl Heinrich Ulrichs, who lived in the Kingdom of Hanover, where homosexuality was not criminally prosecuted, has been studying the phenomenon of homosexuality since the 1850s. He published many articles from the series Riddles of Male Love, German, Rätsel der Männlichen Liebe, in which he in particular developed an early concept of sexual orientation. Studying human sexuality, Ulrichs distinguished, on the one hand, Dianings, German, Dianinge, men who love women and women who love men, and on the other hand, Ennings, German, Dianinge. Erninge, men who love men, and Ernend, German Ernenden, women who love women. Ulrichs believed that Eronism is an innate property of man and therefore homosexuals should not be prosecuted. In 1864, Ulrichs in his work Index Sozialjuristische Studien über Mannmännliches Geschlechtsleben, published in Leipzig, not only demanded an end to criminal punishment and public censure of same-sex love, but also called on homosexuals themselves to unite and fight for their civil rights. In his research, Ulrichs claimed that in every city with more than 100,000 inhabitants there are at least 50 adult homosexuals, and in the entire German Empire there should be up to 35,000 homosexuals. With his numerous publications, Ulrichs tried to awaken in homosexuals the desire for emancipation and the struggle for their rights, as well as to explain to society the consequences of the persecution of same-sex love. In the summer of 1869, Karl Marx sent Friedrich Engels one of Ulrichs' pamphlets. In his reply letter dated June 22, 1869, Engels wrote, "Pederasts begin to count their ranks and believe that they constitute a force in the state. They only lack an organization, but it seems to already exist secretly. Fortunately, we are personally too old to fear that if this party wins, we will be forced to pay tribute to the winners with our bodies. On August 29, 1867, at a meeting of German lawyers in Munich, attended by more than 500 people, Ulrichs for the first time proposed not to consider homosexual relations from the standpoint of offenses and to cancel all existing criminal prosecutions of homosexuals. Such a proposal did not delight the lawyers, who did not allow Ulrichs to finish his speech, considering his report scandalous, overly sexualized and vicious. In 1870, Ulrichs tried to organize a magazine for homosexuals, Uranus, but after the publication of the first issue, the magazine ceased to exist. 9. Soon in 1880, Ulrichs emigrated to Italy due to the increasingly deteriorating attitude of his colleagues towards him and society as a whole towards his works. He died in 1895 in the small Italian town of Aquila in poverty and oblivion. The first mention of the word homosexual in a letter to Kurt Bini. In 1869, Karl Maria Kurt Bini, a Berlin publicist of Hungarian origin who dealt with human rights issues, anonymously published a leaflet in which he spoke out against the criminal prosecution of same-sex relationships. In it, he used the words homosexuality and heterosexuality for the first time. Pathologization of homosexuality. At the end of the 19th century, thanks to the publications of scientific works by many eminent psychiatrists, homosexuality began to be considered a mental illness. 10. The terms homosexuality and heterosexuality at that time referred exclusively to sexual behavior, that is, specific sexual contacts, and not feelings, desires, or fantasies. In 1869, the Berlin psychiatrist Karl Westphal introduced the term contrasexuality, German, Kontrasexualität, for persons practicing same-sex sexual contacts and persons wearing clothes of the opposite sex. Such people are classified by Westphal as mentally ill. In 1886, psychiatrist and sexologist Richard von Krafft-Ebing, who also directed the Asylum for the Insane, published his famous work Psychopathia Sexualis, in which he distinguishes between innate and acquired forms of homosexuality and introduces them to the rank of sexual deviations and sexual perversions. In 1891, psychiatrist and sexologist Albert Moll published the first monograph in German entirely devoted to homosexuality, his work Die contrare Sexualempfindung. He considers homosexuality an innate property and classifies it as a painful perversion, and also speaks out against the criminal prosecution of homosexuals. Thank you for listening to the first part. We will release the second one in the near future. Once again, I ask you to subscribe and put your finger up. Thank you.